It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Realty Executives Preferred Advisors.
Good Sunday morning to you. This is Karey Brown, broker owner of Realty Executives Preferred Advisors, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. Today I am here with Richard Faulkner, and he is the Division Director of Development Services for the City of Topeka. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. How are you, Karey?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
So we're going to be talking about all the different things that go into developments and how that affects the consumer and the things that you really need to know. So, Richard, let's start with the coordination of plan reviews. What does that mean to the consumer?
Well, what the Development Services responsibility is to review all construction projects in the City of Topeka. That means new buildings as well as some remodeling of buildings. So that's done through our plan review process. Some projects, larger projects, the more involved they are, naturally the longer it takes for those projects to get through the permitting process. Smaller projects where they're just coming in and redoing or remodeling an existing space, they don't take as long. So we can handle most of that stuff in-house at Development Services. But when you have a larger project, a new building, other divisions get involved. We have engineering gets involved. They're going to be looking at traffic, water, sewer, and then we may also have, depending on what's in the building, Department of Agriculture may get involved. Depending where it's located, FEMA may get involved for floodplain issues. And so not only do we have other divisions that get involved, we have other agencies that may get involved. In Development Services, we are the coordinator of all of those requirements so that we can get the permit issued and make sure that all of the rules and regulations are followed. So those larger projects take a little more time. What we do try to do is someone is just coming in and they just want to remodel an existing space, and most of that work is done in-house in Development Services. We try to get those projects in and out as quickly as possible because they're not as involved. But we have the responsibility for the large projects as well as the smaller projects.
So whenever you say remodeling an existing structure, they do still have to come to you guys and give you a plan?
Exactly, and that's a good point. A lot of times what happens is they don't know that, and they'll go in and they'll do the work, and then somebody will notify us, and then we'll go out and tell them, hey, you should have contacted us. So what we try to do is if someone is interested in starting a new business, we try to make sure they contact the planning department. And I'm in the planning department. I'm a division of the planning department. And planning will work with them. Also, we've been trying to partner with Go Topeka. They have some small business administration assistance for small businesses. And we encourage people to contact them as well so they can get their assistance, as well as Development Services working with them to redo a small space. So it does become, that's been an issue since I've been here. I'm finding that a lot of small businesses aren't aware that they need to do some things, and it's causing them harm at the end if they would have been very helpful up front.
Gotcha. So during the process, I'm sure you guys run across a lot of things that probably should have been inspected. What kind of inspections should they be doing? Once
a project is complete, depending on what's all involved, there'll be several inspections. For a new building, we'll do footings and foundation, the framing of the structure, and then the rough end of the structure, which include the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and then the final inspection of that structure once it's complete, and we'll issue a certificate of occupancy. Development Services' goal is to make sure that those structures where the public goes in are safe. That's our main responsibility.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing,
Yeah, I would hope.
Nothing falls in on them.
Yes.
Totally makes sense. Okay. And so zoning, I know that that's a big deal. We've actually had one of the guys from zoning on before. But explain how to know and what are the processes when it involves you guys?
What we do, and when it's a new building, we make sure that building is in the right zoning district. And a simplified explanation of zoning is to make sure like uses are together. Like you won't find a McDonald's in the middle of a residential district because there's all homes there and the traffic is different. So we try and keep things in zoning. You try and keep things in the same district. So part of the development review process, we make sure that the uses are in a proper zoning district once we get started. If not, we'll refer them to planning, and planning will work with them to either rezone the property or help them find another location for their business.
And if by chance you guys might want to do that, we do have an audio saved of the zoning, and he went through and explained it very well. So anytime you'd like to listen to that, visit our webpage at TopekaHomeAdvisors.com. You could also check us out on Facebook at Realty Executives Preferred Advisors. Okay, so when it comes to properties, whenever you talk about legal descriptions, can you explain how that comes into play?
A lot of times when someone's building a structure, we need to make sure that where they're putting it. A lot of times, say even if someone's remodeling a structure, they'll come in, they'll say, well, it's where the second Bobo's was, or, that's not a good source of direction or information that we need. We actually need to have a physical address. And then what we'll do is take that physical address and contact the county and make sure that there's a legal description behind that physical address. Sometimes that can be challenging, and sometimes we had one situation where we had a lot that had 3 different addresses on it, and they wanted to build a building on it. So we do development services. We assign addresses to property. That's one of the things that we do. So we had to work with the business to make sure that they had the proper address. So the legal description is very important for us to address the property. And a lot of times that's not that important to somebody that's got a product they want to get to the market. They're not concerned about a legal description. They're concerned about their product. So that can be a little bit of a hiccup also.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I know we have people calling in to see houses all the time, and they'll be like, well, it was the blue house, and I think it was on this street. And, addresses are always helpful. So
Correct.
Totally understand that.
Correct.
Let's talk about historical districts. How do you guys handle that?
Well, when a structure is in a historical district or is a historical structure, we send it to the planning department, and they have a historical preservation planner, and he looks at what's being done to the structure. Also, some structures that meet certain criteria may be eligible for certain funds available if they follow the guidelines. So we make sure that if it's in that area, that we do include planning in the review process so that they can have some input on that structure. So we do, that's one of the divisions we also contact to make sure that they have a chance to look at any new construction or remodeling of a historical structure.
I know when it comes to homes that are historically registered, the goal is to try and stay as close to that period as possible. Is that the same as in the commercial sector?
Yes, they try to do that. They try to, even if there's any restoration that's done, they try and restore it back to the original character of the time period that the structure was constructed. And I know that that's challenging to do, but like I said, there's some financial assistance when those goals are achieved.
Absolutely, and that is also in the residential sector. So there are funds available to restore those back to their original appeal and character, which is great because they're beautiful. I mean, they just don't build things like they used to with so much character.
Correct. Yep.
All right, erosion control. Let's talk about that. What is that exactly?
Erosion control is basically keeping sediment and debris that can run off your property into the street on your property. And that's a major concern as we try to, our environmental concerns about having those things get into our stormwater system and getting into our lakes and affecting our ecosystem. So erosion control is a major part of our development process. When new structures are built, they have to submit actually an erosion plan. I don't know if you've seen those orange fences up. Those are silt fences to make sure that the mud from the project doesn't run down the street or get in the street. That's a big problem. So they have to make sure that they submit a plan to make sure that that doesn't happen. And it's an important part of the development process.
Absolutely. You don't want your neighbors mad or,
Exactly.
people tracking it all over town.
Exactly.
Making the streets nasty.
Right.
Okay. So drainage easements, how do you guys plan that?
Well, drainage easements, we tried drainage easements or follow along a natural drainage course. So when a development's being put in, if the property hasn't been platted, engineering takes a look at it and they try to make sure that the drainage ways aren't blocked that would cause water to back up or run onto adjacent properties and cause flooding. So they make sure that the drainage easements you're not constructing in those, and they also, when the new plat is done, they also make sure that they're put on the plat so that anyone that builds on those property knows that you can't build anything in the drainage easement. It needs to be there for the water flow. So that's an important part.
So that's not a good place to plant your garden, right?
No, I mean, I guess you could. It'd be
You wouldn't have to worry about watering.
no.
So whenever you're going through the process and a part of the checklist of things that you have to address, site drainage is one of them. How is that different from drainage easements?
Well, site drainage is when you're developing a site that was in a natural form and it was just draining as it regularly does. When you add an impervious surface, the water drainage changes. So in most areas, depending on how big your change of the impervious surface is, you may be required to retain that water on your property before it's discharged. So in the site drainage, there's two things that are looked at, which is water quantity, the amount of water that's held on your property, and then water quality, what happens to that water when it's discharged into the storm sewer system. So we want to make sure that the water, you have enough space on your property to maintain the water runoff, and then when you discharge it, to make sure that it's not going to have a negative impact on our ecological system. So that needs to be treated before it's discharged into the stormwater. So that's site drainage, what we have to look at.
Thanks for listening to Real Estate 101. We're going to be back after a word from our sponsors.
Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you, northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Karey Brown, broker-owner of Realty Executives Preferred Advisors, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I'm back with Richard Faulkner. He is the Division Director of Development Services for the City of Topeka, and we're talking about all of the things that go into putting in commercial structures and what you need to know as far as planning. So before the break, we were talking about the drainage. Now let's talk about taxes. How is that figured?
Well, a lot of times... Well, not a lot of times. One of the things that we look at is we can't issue a permit to anyone who owes taxes on their property. So a lot of times somebody may come in and they want to build something on a tract of land, and one of the things we check is the county records to make sure that their taxes are current. If taxes aren't current, we won't issue a building permit until they are brought current. So unless there's situations where they need to get a permit, such as if it's a dangerous building and they need to get a demolition permit, we'll go ahead and issue a demolition permit for something like that. But if it's for new construction or remodeling of an existing structure, we won't issue a permit until the taxes are paid.
Makes sense. I know whenever it comes to buying a house, that has to be done also. Same with child support payments. All that stuff has to be current too. Floodplain verification. That's a fun one because I know that FEMA had redistricted a lot of our areas. So how do they go about getting all that process done?
When the floodplain verification, that's involved, can be an involved process. Building in the floodplain, you're required, city regulations require you, if you're going to build in the floodplain. Well, let me explain, back up a little bit. There's a difference between the floodplain and the floodway. The floodway is actually the water streaming in the floodplain or the outer banks of that. The city will allow you to build in the floodplain as long as you elevate your structure a foot above the base flood elevation. In some places, that may just be a foot. In some places, it could be up to 7 feet that you'll have to fill in, and it really can cause a problem for developers to do that. It can be very costly. So it sounds simple, a foot, but like I said, in some areas, if the grade level is right at flood elevation, so you just need to go a foot above that. But sometimes the flood elevation is 4 or 5 feet above the ground elevation, so you need to go 4 or 5 feet up just to get to the flood elevation, and then a foot on top of that. And so in building in the flood plain, you can wind up having to deal with not only the city, you'll have to deal with the county and possibly the federal government, because FEMA wants to know what you're building and where you're building it. Are you meeting certain standards, just like the state and the city? So it gets involved when you're dealing with floodplain issues.
Makes sense. That also affects the insurance on the property. So definitely something you want to make sure you understand.
Definitely.
So site development conditions, what all goes into determining what that is?
The site development conditions are things that if you come in and say that you have a project and say you're building in the floodplain and you want to get started on that project and you got 4 or 5 feet of fill you need to bring in, and depending on the site, that can take you a couple of months to do that, to get it all in. So what we can do in the development process is go ahead and issue you a site development permit to let you get started on the site while your plans are still in the review process. So it'll help you facilitate your construction project by us allowing you to go ahead and do your site development work separate from your building permit, which still may be in the building plan review process, so that you can move your project along. Okay.
So speaking of which, tracking the projects that are in for review, how does that work?
Well, what has traditionally gone on, you submit your plans to the city. We'll take the plans, disperse them to the different agencies, the different divisions. Development Services does this, and then it's in the process. And when I came on board, everyone was like, well, where's my permit at? I submitted my plans. I don't know who's got my permit. So one of the things that initiative that I'm working on right now is to try and establish a public portal, which will allow developers and contractors, once they submit their project, they'll be given a passcode, and they'll be able to enter this public portal and see which disciplines have approved their project or haven't approved them, and why they haven't approved them. So then it's not like, well, I just put it in this hole and I don't know what's going on till the permit comes out. And so they can follow along with the process to know if engineering has approved it, if development services has approved it, if planning has approved it, so they'll know where the project is in the development process. So being a little bit more transparent on that process, I think, will help alleviate a lot of conflict that we have sometimes.
I understand you guys have got some really exciting things working with the plan submittal process. Explain that.
Yeah, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to move to, is an electronic plan submittal as well as electronic plan review process. Currently, we get rows of plans in. We have to tag them. We have to route them around. And if you're looking for some plans, say, and they're on the shelf, you got to stand there and go through each one of the tags and try and find which plan you're looking for. That can take time. So what we're trying to do, or what we're moving toward, is establishing electronic plan submittal. What'll happen by that way, the plans are already tagged, because when you submit them, they'll have a title on them, and then we'll be able to not distribute the plans, but we'll be able to let the other divisions and departments know that we got the plans in, they're in this folder, and you can go in and review them when you get a chance. And what happens is when they review them, we're also working towards the electronic plan review system where they can redline the drawings if there's anything that needs to be addressed, and then send that sheet in an email to the design professional so that they can be able to respond quicker. Hopefully by doing this, we can reduce the time it's taking to get the plans through the plan review process.
I would imagine that would make things night and day different.
Definitely. I mean, we're in a technological age. The software's out there. Getting people trained and up to speed on it will probably be our biggest process. Not the purchasing of the software, but I think that's going to be our biggest challenge. But once, like I see my staff sometimes there, that's where I got the standing there looking at this row of plans and trying to find that's not it. Going through the tags when they can go down and sit at their desk, pull it up off the file, and there the plans are right there. Or they're spending 10 or 15 minutes over there trying to find a plan on the shelf. They can find it in seconds, which would be much more efficient.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more in depth about the inspection process.
Presently, my inspectors, we have a software that we're using for the inspection process. But what happens right now is the inspectors, they go out to the field, they do the inspection, then they come back to the office, and they put the information in a software that's on their desktop. What we're implementing now is the inspectors will have iPads, and when they go out into the field, they'll be able to enter their inspection right there in the field. And as part of the public portal for the plan review process, we're also going to be opening up a public portal for the inspection process, because right now, like I said, the inspectors would go out to the field, they come back to the office and put it in, and between that time, the contractors are wanting to know, have they been out here? So we'll also give the contractors an access code if they've called in for an inspection and it's been scheduled, and they won't have to call into the office. They'll be able to take their access code, look at the public portal, and see if the inspection's been done, any comments that have been made. So that's going to bring the inspection process up to real time and hopefully alleviate some lag time in them finding out about whether or not inspection's been performed.
So basically, you guys will be totally streamlined.
That's my goal, hopefully, to update things. And by doing so, I think it's going to be a lot better, not only for the public, but for my staff as well. The technology's out there, the software we have is working, and it has a lot more capabilities that we haven't really tapped into. My next goal will be we also handle licensing, and we're going to try and have the licensing done electronically. Right now it's paper. We get like 3,000 licenses. They're all due at the same time, and it takes a long time to get that done. Whereas if we can get it, start doing it electronically, it'll work a lot quicker.
So what would you say is a big challenge that you see in your department that you feel like could be prevented?
My biggest, the thing that really tugs at me that I'm concerned about are our small businesses. Our small businesses, first of all, are very important to our community. And so we need them, and we need them to thrive, and we need them to open, we need them to participate in our market. But what's happening is, like I said earlier, they have a product, and they have it in their mind, and they want to get it to market, and that's their main focus. However, there's a lot of regulations that they have to follow before they start. And my major concern is I just want to make sure that they understand that we want to help. We don't want to stop small businesses. That's not our goal. But what's happening is the information isn't getting to them to let them know, come to the city first, have us work with you to open your small business. Let's work together and try to have your business when it opens that you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. Because what's happening, or what's happened since I've been here, I've been involved in a couple of situations where I really felt bad. A small business opened, or a small operation opened, and it wasn't in compliance with the regulations. And then what's happening is, to bring it in compliance with the regulations, the financial burden is of such that they can't continue. And that's not what we want. So if we can let them know about the situation and what's all involved up front, it can help reduce, like I said, some problems on the back end of it. However, a lot of times, a lot of people don't know that when you come into development services, you can't sit down and just draw up your plans. You can't do that. We need to have a design professional, which is an engineer or architect, draw up your plans, even if it's just a remodel of an existing structure. So that catches people off guard. A lot of times they're also caught off guard. Well, a restaurant was in there and I'm going in with a restaurant. But there are different things involved. If you had a restaurant and you're just making cold cut sandwiches, you're fine. But then you open a restaurant and you're frying chicken, cooking pizza. That's a different type of restaurant, and it has a different set of requirements that are going to be placed on it versus the one that was just selling cold cut sandwiches. And so, and a lot of times people, the average public, which I understand, don't get that difference. However, we have to. And so those type of things, challenging to me to try and get that understanding across. But I think that if we can just start with making sure they understand, come to the city first, talk to them about what you want to do, which we have a committee, a pre-permitting committee, plan review committee, where we'll sit down, talk to you if you got an idea about a new building or a new business you want. We have a committee that'll sit down with you and tell you about the different aspects of your development and what you need to do. So we do have that in place, but getting the word out that we have that in place is not always successful. So I appreciate you having me come on to share this information. Absolutely, my pleasure. Also, reiterate about Go Topeka and how they help too. Well, we just started partnering with Go Topeka. I met with Glenda Washington of Go Topeka, and we were talking about this same issue, the small business issue. They have some funding to assist small businesses in their development. What we're trying to do is trying to figure out where best, or what I want to do is help them to figure out where best those funds can be spent to help those small businesses come to fruition. And I believe it's going to be on the design professional side, because hiring an architect or engineer to draw your plans can be costly, and we understand that. We're not blind to that, but it is part of our requirements. It's even part of the state statutes, so we have to have that to make sure that things are safe. So, Richard, how would they get a hold of you to get all this, get everything started, and get the right advice and all of that? Well, they can email me, and you can email me at Faulkner, that's Faulkner, at topeka.org, or you can reach me by phone at 368-3704. Absolutely. And if you're looking to buy or sell a home, give us a call. Our number is 785-213-5188. You can also search all of the Kansas City metro area, clear into Missouri, all the way to Manhattan, all the way up to the Nebraska border, and down to Lebo on our website. Zillow can't even say that, so definitely go out and check it out. It's TopekaHomeAdvisors.com. And thanks for listening to Real Estate 101.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Realty Executives Preferred Advisors. Tune in again next Sunday at 11 o'clock for Real Estate 101.